With the new year begun, it's time to count down my top 10 holy places of 2025. I visited 54 places this past year, well surpassing a total of 300 religious sites, and it was pretty tough narrowing my choices down to only 10. But here they are. Are you ready for the countdown? In the number 10 slot is the Divine Mercy Shrine in Stockbridge, Massachusetts. After taking a poll on X, my followers chose to send me to Massachusetts for a Holy Places trip, and it did not disappoint. One of my initial favorites was the Divine Mercy Shrine. Set in its own little town, which had some of the nicest people I've ever met. The church itself is at the top of a small hill. I briefly sat in the service surrounded by nuns. The church was built in the 1950s, and the architect had no blueprints, saying the whole thing was inside his own head. The interior is fairly simple, using Vermont marble with rich wooden accents, including the pulpit itself, but my favorite feature is the altar. Using the same wood as its framework, the altar features the 12 apostles in subtle colors, with Mary in white at the center and a mural of the Trinity above her. At number 9, we have the Notre Dame Church of St. John Paul II in Southbridge, Massachusetts. This church was a complete surprise. I did not know of its existence when I set out on my Massachusetts trip and learned of it while speaking with the caretaker at a different church entirely. I set out to find it and was absolutely blown away. Built in the early 1900s to serve French-Canadian immigrants, the details in this church are spectacular, from the carvings to the painted ceiling panels. The shape of the ceiling itself is somewhat unique, and from photos it almost looks AI generated, but no, that's a real place right here in the US. Number 8 is Our Lady of Wisdom in Las Vegas, Nevada. I went down to Vegas on a weekend whim to capture a few of its Orthodox churches, and this one was my favorite. It is the only Italo-Greek Byzantine Catholic church in the United States. The exterior is very unassuming, but the interior is a whole other story. The blue is rich and vibrant, and the gold accents really add a level of beauty and opulence that I did not see in the other churches of Vegas. This one stands out, and I highly recommend a visit if you're in that area. At number 7, we have St. Joseph's Basilica in Webster, Massachusetts. This church delighted me before I even went in. The doors feature bronze panels depicting images of Christ in relief. They are easily some of the most beautiful doors I have seen in this country, and this concept is repeated in the side doors as well. But the interior was also really remarkable and something unique that I've not seen in this country. The altar itself is beautifully carved, and again I do love the colors of the figures, but the artwork surrounding the altarpiece is also quite beautiful. And to top it all off, this church has some absolutely stunning stained glass windows. And you know I love me some stained glass windows, guys. Number 6 is St. Cyril and Methodius in Bridgeport, Connecticut. This Romanesque revival church is over a century old and was originally established by the St. Joseph Society. The church served Slovakian immigrants initially, and today is the only Catholic church in Bridgeport that still regularly performs the Latin Mass. I personally enjoy the soft pink and blue tones that create the backdrop for the bright white marble altar. At number 5, we have the Ling Shen Qingze Temple in Redmond, Washington. This Buddhist temple is a somewhat more recent addition to the state, opening in 1985. The U.S. has many Buddhist temples, and we saw several in the Seattle area alone, and while I loved the extensive grounds of the Kolam Pagoda, for example, this one took the prize as my top favorite temple in Washington. It's one of my favorites in the U.S., as a matter of fact. The use of vibrant color is always enchanting. There are great details both inside and out. I always do love the dragons surrounding the columns. Then there are paintings on the walls inside, including a few from Hindu mythology, and there are dozens and dozens of Buddhas in a massive altar display. It amazes me how something can be peaceful and opulent at the same time. At number 4, we have the Hindu Cultural Center in Bothell, Washington. I do have a weakness for Hindu temples, and this was an instant favorite. It's not yet finished, and they were in fact doing construction work when I visited, but the standout feature here is the blue carved tower. You often see these types of structures at Hindu temples, but generally they will be white or some neutral color, at least here in the US. But this one is my favorite in the country precisely because it is colorful. The blue entrance is guarded by golden figures, but the tower above is created as a showcase of brightly painted Hindu gods that add tons of color and interest. I truly wish we had more of this. I think we need more color in our religious buildings. This Hindu temple nails it. At number 3, we have St. Nectarios, an Orthodox church in Roslindale, Massachusetts. Speaking of color, this is another one that absolutely brings it. From the moment you walk in, you are treated to vibrantly colored iconography in every corner you look. This is not an especially large church, but is an absolute feast for the eyes. Once again, we have rich, beautiful blues, and we have accents in wood and gold. The ceiling features Christ surrounded by the emblems of the four Gospels as well as the Apostles, and every ceiling and wall surface seems to be an excuse for more art. I had a father in an Orthodox church once tell me that in speaking with a non-Orthodox Christian, he was asked why they did not have Bibles at their pews. The father responded that the church itself is a Bible, as all the iconography you are surrounded by is designed to tell the story of the Bible. So the next time you walk into an Orthodox church, think of it as walking into Scripture. At number 2, we have St. John the Guardian of Our Lady Parish in Clinton, Massachusetts. Yet again, we have a church that is beautifully colorful and detailed. Always two of the features I appreciate most in a church. Started by Irish immigrants, this Gothic Revival church was completed in 1886. Today, it offers Mass in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. This was one of those churches that took my breath away completely when I walked in. Everything about this church is perfection and ultimately speaks to what Gothic was always meant to be. It's hard to beat the beauty of a church like this, and I'd love to see us creating more of them. We've gotten through 9 of my top 10, but before we get to the very top one, I have a few that I want to throw out as honorable mentions. These came very close to making the list. There is the Sri Swaminarayan Temple in Sharon, Massachusetts. The reason this didn't quite make it was because while the altars were completely spectacular, the rest of the temple was mostly an auditorium type of space. But you must admit those altars are dazzling. If the rest of the temple had looked this divine, it would have been a shoo-in. In Lowell, Massachusetts, I visited the Immaculate Conception Church, which was the first church I ever learned about in Massachusetts after I started this project. It ended up being outshined by some others, but its white and gold interior is quite pretty, and the stained glass is spectacular. And lastly, our Mother of Perpetual Help in Northfield, Massachusetts. Located on the campus of Thomas Aquinas College and originally known as the Sage Chapel, this church was recently renovated and redesigned, and the result is really quite eye-catching. The color scheme is unique, I like the exposed wood timbers, and the altar is a thing of beauty. What was a very simple chapel with very little decoration became a triumph of modern Christian architecture. I hope you've been enjoying this list so far, and of course, before we get to my number 1 pick, I'm going to ask you to please help support the channel by liking this content, subscribing, and hitting the notification bell. And please let me know in the comments what your favorite one was. And now, in the number 1 spot, the Notre Dame Basilica in Montreal, Canada. This marvel of architecture began as a Gothic Revival church, but does borrow touches from other styles to create one of the most spectacular churches I have ever seen. The only one I've been to in Canada, this church was on my list before I even had an official list, so this was a dream come true for me. The church was designed by James O'Donnell, an Irish-American from New York City. He is the only person buried in the church's crypt, converting to Roman Catholicism on his deathbed before the church's completion. This church has multiple side chapels which do not get photographed nearly as often and don't get enough love in my opinion, but they are works of art in themselves. Gaining inspiration from Paris's Sainte-Chapelle, they utilize gold leaf motifs and painted columns. The high altar of this church is absolutely massive, with a central piece depicting the crucifixion with Mary and John, as well as figures such as Moses, Aaron, Melchizedek, and Abraham. To the sides of this central feature, you will also find various saintly figures. This is the most popular feature of the church, and there will likely be multiple people getting photos, and who can blame them? One final unique element of this church is the spiraling stair. This hand-carved wooden staircase was created in 1830, and the acoustics of the church allowed the priest to preach from the pulpit here without microphones. Climbing the stairs is unfortunately not allowed, but you can still appreciate their beauty from below. They symbolize the progress of the Spirit using different levels of prayer. All in all, this church was well worth the wait for me, and definitely earned its spot as the most beautiful holy place I visited in 2025.